Tonight, as we speak, our focus is on these 12 hours passing by. Donald Trump's deadline against Iran ends in a few hours from now. The US president, remember, has said a whole civilization will die tonight. All eyes are now on what happens next. But even as his boss churned out new threats, J.D. Vance said in Hungary that he's hopeful of a deal. Will there be one? We explore the big question: will diplomacy win or decimation will have its way? And amid all of this, reports of Mojtaba Khamenei's health once again raised doubts over his status. A Time report states that he's unconscious. Details on this coming up in just a bit. West Asia is on the edge. Will Iran agree to a deal? With 8.5 hours left for his deadline, American President Donald Trump has issued a fresh threat. He's warned that a whole civilization will die tonight. Even as the suspense over Iran's move continues, America and Israel have intensified their strikes against Iran. And in fact, in a major escalation, the U.S. military carried out additional strikes on military targets on the Kharg island today. It handles 90% of Iran's oil exports. As a result, Brent crude prices jumped to $110.22 per barrel, while American Vice President J.D. Vance triggered speculation by saying that U.S. forces have tools in their toolkit which they haven't decided to use yet. The White House has clarified that it is not planning to use nuclear weapons against Iran. Early in the morning, residents of Tehran woke up to sounds of loud explosions. Footage showed thick smoke billowing into the sky from the scene. As per Iranian state media, Israeli and American strikes resulted in the death of at least 9 people in the Shahryar city, 6 people in Tabraiz and 18 others in Al-Borz province. Israel launched yet another wave of strikes on Iran's infrastructure sites. For instance, it struck a petrochemical complex in Shiraz, which the IDF claimed was one of the few remaining sites in Iran for producing chemical components for explosives and materials for ballistic missiles. In fact, the IDF also claimed to have struck 8 bridge segments used by Iran's military to transport weapons and military equipment in several areas, including Tehran, Kharg, Tabraiz, Kerman, and Qom. Israel attacked railway-related infrastructure in 4 provinces today. For instance, an airstrike hit the railway line in Kharg, leaving some people with injuries there. Now, apart from Kharg, Iranian state media reported destruction of railway bridges in Kashan and Zanjan. Rail infrastructure in Qazvin was struck as well. Israeli-American strikes targeted a train station in Mashhad as well, and a highway bridge on the Tabriz-Tehran freeway. Tehran's Mehrabad airport was struck early this morning. Footage showed multiple fires raging and thick plumes of smoke emanating from the airport's vicinity. As per Iran, a synagogue in Tehran was destroyed in airstrikes. On the other hand, the Iranian military has warned that it would retaliate beyond West Asia and target infrastructure in West Asia to deprive America and its allies of oil and gas. For years, remember, if America crossed the red line. Iran has also warned that it is prepared to plunge West Asia into darkness if US attacks Iran's power stations. It has also threatened to close the Bab al-Mandeb Strait if the situation gets out of control. Tehran's retaliation continued in full swing, with the IRGC launching missiles like Fateh and Khyber Shekhan from dual launchers for the first time. It attacked the Jubail petrochemical complex, which is the heart of Saudi Arabia's energy sector and home to multi-billion-dollar joint ventures. Visuals showed missiles striking this facility, which accounts for nearly 7% of the world's global petrochemical output. Israel continued as well to bear the brunt of Iran's retaliatory attacks. The damage was caused in various Israeli cities due to missiles fired by Tehran. In fact, in a big snub to Trump, who has threatened to destroy Iranian power plants and bridges, the people of Tabraiz formed a human chain today in front of the thermal power plant in the city. As this war rages on, the human cost of the conflict has been growing. The casualties continue to mount. Iran's death toll has now surged over 3,500. On the other hand, 13 US military personnel have died and 200 others have been injured. Israel's intensified attacks have resulted in close to 1,500 deaths in Lebanon so far. With the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian declaring that 14 million people, including himself, are ready to sacrifice their lives in the West Asian war, it is now apparent that Tehran isn't in a mood to compromise anytime soon. As the countdown to Trump's deadline has begun, Iran's next steps will be closely awaited by the entire world. West Asia is standing at the same and dangerous crossroads once again, with hours to go before US President Donald Trump's latest deadline to Iran. It is set to expire. The region is holding its breath. Will this be the moment of diplomacy or the beginning of a far more devastating phase of war? In his recent Truth Social post, Donald Trump has warned Iran to wipe out their whole civilization and push them to a point of no return. He's vowed to end the 47 years of corruption, extortion, and death under the Ayatollah regime. But is Donald Trump's road to peace flowing through devastation? With Hormuz remaining as the main flashpoint in this war, American strikes are now continuing in full force, blurring all red lines. Trump's message to comply or face devastation. It puts the focus on the shifting deadlines for Iran. Sample this. 22nd of March, he says open Hormuz in 48 hours. On 26th of March, he says open Hormuz in the next 5 days. Then the next day, on the 27th, he says open Hormuz in 10 days. Then on the 4th of April, Donald Trump says open Hormuz in 48 hours. On the 5th of April, he says open the Strait of Hormuz by Tuesday. And on the 7th of April, that's today, he says open Hormuz by Wednesday. Donald Trump's extension has been a pattern of further escalation, at least so far. Trump has threatened to blow up every bridge and every power plant in Iran if Tehran fails to agree to his demands. He's also vowed to send Iran back to the Stone Age. In fact, the situation on the ground is volatile at the moment, even as Washington talks about a temporary ceasefire. Remember, Tehran is calling it a trap. A chance for the United States and Israel to regroup and strike Iran once again. Iran, on its part, has been demanding a permanent end to this war. They have publicly rejected the proposal shared through their intermediaries. Iran instead has sent a 10-point proposal to Washington through Islamabad. While diplomacy continues to remain stalled, the battlefield is now heating up, and Tehran's firepower cannot be underestimated. The downing of the US F-15E fighter jet is a major example of this military prowess that Iran has. Last week, they released a list of 8 major bridges in West Asia which could be targeted by the IRGC. The downing of the F-15E Strike Eagle, remember, reportedly marked the first such incident of a U.S. fighter jet being shot down by enemy fire in the last over 20 years. On the very same day, Iran also claimed to have destroyed one A-10 Warthog fighter aircraft that fell in Kuwait. And that is not all. In the process of rescuing the officer stranded in Iran, U.S. ended up losing multiple aircraft. According to Iranian military, 2 Black Hawk helicopters and 2 C-130 aircraft were blown to pieces. It also said that an MQ-9 Reaper and a Hermes 900 drone had been destroyed over the Isfahan province. Now, stopping Iran's nuclear program is Washington's endgame. Its military campaign aims to prevent Iran from achieving weapons-ready nuclear stockpile, while airstrikes and long-range attacks can damage facilities. Remember, destroying or even removing Iran's nuclear stockpile would likely require a full-scale ground invasion. Washington's intention of putting boots on ground has been evident, but such an operation would not only face Iran's military fury, its natural defenses as well will be affected. In fact, any ground operation into Iran would have to be highly specific and limited in scope. Otherwise, it could lead to endless deployments with huge costs and limited success, similar to past conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. So as the clock ticks down on yet another deadline, what is West Asia staring at? Is it heading towards a deal or another deadline, or a much larger and further devastation in this conflict? At first, it looks like confusion, mixed signals, a split tone from the top, but look closer, the pattern sharpens. On one side stands Donald Trump, furious, unfiltered, issuing stark warnings. He says Iran faces total destruction if it misses the deadline. Just look at this Truth Social post. A whole civilization will die tonight is what he says, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. That's what Trump has written on Truth Social. He talks of bombing bridges, power plants, critical infrastructure, language designed to shake, to rattle, to force a response.
We have a plan, because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to.
On the other side, there is J.D. Vance, calm, controlled. Speaking from Budapest, he projected confidence, even saying that the plan is working, also claiming that American objectives in this war have largely been achieved. He signals stability, where Trump signals chaos.
The United States has largely accomplished its military objectives. There are still some things that we'd like to do, for example, on Iranian ability to manufacture weapons that we'd like to do a little bit more work on militarily. But fundamentally, the military objectives of the United States have been completed. So that means, as the president has said, very shortly this war is going to conclude.
So 2 tones, 1 strategy. Diplomats and analysts see this as classic play. Good cop, bad cop. Pressure and reassurance working in tandem. One raises the stakes, the other offers a way out. The deadline looms, no extension promised. Behind the rhetoric lies a brutal reality. American and Israeli strikes have already hit deep inside Iran. Military sites, strategic assets, each strike designed to degrade capability and force compliance. Yet, Iran has not backed down. Instead, it has adapted. Fewer launches, more precise hits, a war evolving under pressure. And now the messaging of this war is only intensifying. Trump's warnings aim to corner Tehran. J.D. Vance's words aim to keep the door open, and together they form a tight vice. The world is uneasy, because when diplomacy sounds like a threat and threats sound like a plan, the margin for error shrinks fast. And with the clock ticking down, one question hangs in the air. Will Donald Trump announce another extension, or will he unleash hell as he's promised on Iran? The Gulf countries are bracing as Iranian forces have vowed to retaliate with everything they have. In fact, they promise that this will be an attack like none other. Two voices, one message. Pressure's rising, clock has been ticking, and the world watches as Washington tightens the squeeze around Iran. Both the president and the vice president are using threats, but in differing voices. Did the United States deploy its most secretive drone, the RQ-180, to pull off the mission inside Iran to rescue one of its aviators? Well, before we divulge into this, let's first connect the dots. Last month, reports claimed that a mysterious high-altitude stealth surveillance drone, believed to be the RQ-180, was spotted landing at the Larissa Air Base in Greece. This base is known to host US MQ-9 Reaper drones, as well as reconnaissance squadrons. Around the same time as the mysterious drone was spotted, the US Air Force cargo planes reportedly made unusual flights from Edwards Air Force Base in California to Larissa. Edwards, remember, is the hub of advanced aviation testing and reportedly a major testing center of the RQ-180 drones. And just weeks later, new reports surfaced of the drones apparently making an approach to land at the airbase in Greece. Around the same timeline, the rescue operation unfolded in Iran, where a US F-15E fighter jet was shot down deep inside Iranian territory. Its two crew members ejected into separate parts of hostile terrain. What followed was a high-risk, nearly 46-hour operation involving more than 170 aircraft, 200 troops, and CIA coordination. Helicopters came under fire, transport aircraft malfunctioned, and they were destroyed on the ground. Attack jets took hits, pilots ejected. To put it simply, complete chaos unfolded. Yet, somehow, the mission succeeded. Bringing us to the question, how did the US locate and track its personnel inside one of the most heavily monitored airspaces in the world? CIA Director John Ratcliffe offered this clue. The CIA director said that top-secret technology led to the rescue of the downed airman in Iran. In fact, in Ratcliffe's words, exquisite technologies that no other intelligence service in the world possesses helped in the rescue mission.
We achieved our primary objective by finding and providing confirmation that one of America's best and bravest was alive and concealed in a mountain crevice, still invisible to the enemy, but not to the CIA. That confirmation was relayed by Secretary Hegseth to the President, and the operation quickly moved to the execution phase.
So what exactly are these exquisite technologies? Was it a satellite intelligence or something far more elusive? As the CIA director hinted, like the RQ-180, because this drone is designed for exactly this kind of a mission. While the Pentagon has never officially acknowledged the drone's existence, remember it is reportedly designed to penetrate airspace, evade radar, and provide real-time intelligence. Simply put, the RQ-180 operates in the shadows, quiet, invisible, and precise. If the United States needed to find a downed airman hidden in rugged terrain, evade Iranian defenses, and guide rescue forces in real time, the RQ-180 fits perfectly. And consider this. Donald Trump said the second airman or the missing F-15E weapon systems officer was seen moving via an unidentified US camera link. The American president reportedly appeared to be adding to evidence that the CIA had deployed a sophisticated surveillance drone in the mission. The CIA director reportedly told officials that they could see something moving in the vast wilderness, which led to the rescue mission being initiated. Now, such sighting requires not just strategy, but eyes in the sky that the enemy cannot see. So was the drone spotted in Greece part of a forward deployment, a major tool in the rescue mission? What do we know about this? that the timeline aligns. The assets moved, the mission demanded unprecedented precision, and the US is hinting at capabilities far beyond conventional systems. A new report citing a diplomatic memo claims to reveal the location of Iran's new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. According to the Times, he was wounded in the same American-Israeli airstrike that killed his father. And as per this report, Mojtaba Khamenei is unconscious at the moment and is being treated for a severe medical condition in the Iranian city of Qom. The memo also reportedly states that Mojtaba Khamenei is unable to be involved in any decision-making at the moment by the regime. The diplomatic memo is reportedly based on American and Israeli intelligence and has been shared with their Gulf allies as well. Mojtaba Khamenei, remember, has not been seen or heard from since the start of the war. And this is despite being chosen to succeed his father, the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, in early March. Since then, two statements attributed to the 56-year-old leader have been read on Iran's state television. The channel also released a video of him walking into a war room on Monday. But the lack of a recording of his voice has led to reports that the video is perhaps AI generated. The Times report on Mojtaba Khamenei's condition and whereabouts comes just a day after Iran released a fresh statement attributed to the leader. In this statement, Mojtaba Khamenei said that the assassination and crime cannot create any disruption to the country's armed forces. Now, the statement was released by Iran's Arab News following American-Israeli strikes, which killed the IRGC intelligence chief. The battlefield in West Asia is stretching far beyond missiles and airstrikes because Iran and Israel are now locked in a covert war within the wider war. Israeli authorities have reportedly arrested 4 active-duty IDF soldiers on suspicion of spying for Iran during wartime. Investigators say this is not an isolated case. It is, in fact, part of a growing concerning pattern. The soldiers have reportedly remained in custody for weeks now as the agencies dig deeper into what Israeli officials reportedly describe as a serious espionage case due to a court-imposed gag order. Critical details remain under wraps at the moment. However, reports in Israeli media claim that these soldiers allegedly photographed sensitive military locations and passed information to Iranian handlers. Some of the suspects reportedly have no access to legal counsel, and courts have extended their detention as the probe intensifies. But remember, this is not the first breach within the IDF. In 2024, an Israeli soldier was found to have shared classified details about the Iron Dome air defense system and military bases with Iran in exchange for cryptocurrency. That case has already led to an indictment. A separate Israeli investigation is also ongoing, where Israeli citizens are suspected of assisting Iranian elements by manufacturing explosives and conducting experiments, again, during the ongoing war. Now, this is part of a broader pattern. In 2025 alone, 25 Israelis and foreigners faced charges linked to Iranian espionage, while over 100 attempts were intercepted. Recruitment efforts in Israel from Iran handles have reportedly surged, and in most cases, operatives reportedly target individuals alone, luring them with money and gradually escalating their task. Now, the shadow war is growing as well in Iran. Iran has executed individuals accused of collaborating with Israel and the US, including cases tied to protests and alleged plots in Tehran. Iran's judiciary reportedly executed a man convicted of working with Israel and the US during the anti-government protests earlier this year. This man was accused of breaking into a classified military site to seize weapons during the protests in January. Last week, Iran executed 2 men allegedly linked to a US and Israel-backed opposition network, with authorities reportedly claiming that they were planning armed attacks in Tehran using improvised launcher devices. And coming up on Gravitas in a bit, the man behind India's BrahMos missile, Alexander Leonov, is no more. We get you more on him. And it may seem unreal, but North Korea's Kim Jong-un has welcomed with gratitude the apology of the South Korean president. What is this all about? We're getting you all the details on the other side. The energy shock triggered by West Asian war is now rapidly reshaping the global energy landscape, and China is emerging as one of its biggest economic beneficiaries. As oil and gas markets turn volatile, governments across Asia, Europe and beyond are now accelerating their transition toward renewable energy and electric mobility. The surge in fossil fuel prices has exposed vulnerabilities in energy security, particularly for countries that are heavily dependent on imports. In response, both policymakers as well as consumers are shifting faster toward alternatives like solar power, batteries, and EVs. China sits at the center of this transition. It dominates global supply chains for clean energy technologies, producing the majority of the world's solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, and EVs. Even before this latest crisis, exports of these technologies were rising sharply in early 2026. The current energy disruption is now only amplifying that momentum. Major Chinese companies are already seeing tangible gains. Battery giant CATL has recorded a sharp rise in its share prices across both Hong Kong and Shenzhen listings since the escalation in the tensions. Meanwhile, EV leader BYD has reported a significant jump in the overseas sales, with exports and international deliveries climbing strongly year over year. Solar manufacturer Jinko Solar has also reported increased global shipments as demand rises. EVs now account for more than 10% of total car sales in 39 countries, which is up sharply from just 4 back in 2019. Emerging markets are driving this growth. Affordable electric models, particularly from Chinese manufacturers, are gaining global traction. In markets with access to low-cost EVs, the cost advantage over internal combustion engine vehicles is widening faster. Countries like Brazil are already emerging as key markets for Chinese EV exports. In fact, even consumer interest is reflecting this trend, with online searches for EV models and used electric cars hitting peak levels since the conflict began. Electric vehicles now make up more than 50% of new passenger vehicle sales in China. The auto sector itself accounts for roughly 40% of the country's total oil consumption, meaning the transition could significantly curb future demand.
Once war breaks out, oil gets expensive and prices rise right away. But with electric vehicles, electricity prices more or less stay the same. Even if they change, it's only by a small amount. Oil, on the other hand, can go up by 1 or 2 yuan at a time. That makes a big difference. Now, fuel vehicles are getting too expensive to run. With freight rates being low, people can't afford to keep them on the road.
Now, the underlying driver is simply higher fuel costs that are accelerating the economic case for electrification. In China, where transport accounts for a large share of oil demand, the rapid adoption of EVs is already helping cushion the economy from crude price spikes. While the country still depends heavily on imported oil, it is expanding the EV fleet Remember, it is only reducing exposure to shocks in road transport, which is one of the biggest sources of oil consumption. At the same time, Chinese manufacturers are scaling aggressively to meet the rising international demand. In Southeast Asia, where fuel import dependence is high, countries are now turning to EVs and solar installations to reduce costs and improve energy security. Indonesia has announced massive solar expansion plans, while the Philippines is supporting household solar adoption through financing schemes. Europe is stepping up investments as well, with countries like Germany increasing spending on wind energy and EV subsidies. Donald Trump has reiterated his demand for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. That is expected to allow traffic to start following and flowing again through the vital route for global energy supplies. That's the Strait of Hormuz. But he's warned the U.S. would decimate every bridge and power plant within 4 hours of that deadline not being met. But polymarket bets show Donald Trump's deadline for Iran to open the Hormuz will not lead to U.S. strikes. In fact, polymarket bets show just a 3% chance of Trump following through on his Iran threat. The real question now is if Trump chickens out again on his threat to hit Iran's energy infrastructure and bridges. This will not be the first time that Donald Trump's U-turn or extension will be made. On the 21st of March, remember, Trump had threatened to obliterate Iranian power plants if the Strait of Hormuz isn't reopened within 48 hours. But 2 days later, he extended the deadline by another 5 days, saying US and Iran had held very good and productive conversations. Then on the 26th of March, Trump said on Iranian government's request, he is pausing the strikes on Iranian energy plants for 10 days through till the 6th of April. The betting site has increased participation on various Iran war-related options as well. The latest examples of those bets include, will Trump extend the deadline on hitting Iran again? When will the Iran war end? Polymarket saw $10.57 billion in trading volume in March this year. That marks the prediction market site's first month above the $10 billion mark ever. It also shows the increased interest in polymarket bets amid the Iran war. Now, the March figures for polymarket represent a 33% increase from the prior month. That is also a 2.5 times multiple of the October 2024 election peak in US. The total volume in the March quarter reached about $26.2 billion, up over 90% compared to December quarter of last year. Separately, Polymarket US, which was launched late last year, hit over $700 million in March. That represents a 167% increase over February this year. And now, it accounts for 6.6% of the total platform volume, having more than doubled its share year to date. The growth comes despite the platform still being invite-only for the time being and limited to sports markets. That suggests the geopolitics and crypto verticals, which drive a significant share of global polymarket volume, remain entirely untapped in its offering. Opening access to these categories for polymarket users in US could accelerate the platform's growth. But remember, these latest figures come as the CFTC had filed lawsuits last week against the states of Arizona, Connecticut, and Illinois over their attempts to regulate prediction markets. The case filings signal that federal preemption is the likely regulatory framework ahead. Are farm subsidies being siphoned off in Greece? An European Union investigation has now blown the lid off a farm fraud scandal which is turning out to be a political nightmare for the government of Greece. This controversy dates back to last year, when the European Public Prosecutor's Office accused 324 people in Greece of receiving income support from the EU despite not owning or leasing agricultural land. Now, this reportedly deprived genuine farmers of money to which they were entitled to. In October 2025, 37 suspects were arrested. As per the European Union, this caused a loss of more than $22.6 million to its budget. According to EU's Common Agricultural Policy, farmers in Europe get income support of at least $231 per hectare of the land which they own. This subsidy accounts for nearly half of the farmers' income on an average, and so far at least 6 million farmers have benefited from this scheme. In Greece, though, a government agency tasked with supervising the payment of this subsidy has been accused of mismanaging funds under alleged pressure of lawmakers belonging to the ruling New Democracy Party. As per the prosecutors, this agency had become the acronym for corruption, nepotism, and clientelism. Greece was fined $453 million last year in connection with this probe.
For years, criminals held by civil servants and high officials were stealing European money. This money was supposed to help honest and hard-working farmers and their families to cultivate this beautiful land.
While the New Democracy Party has 156 members in the 300-member Greece parliament, it is now increasingly facing the heat. A few days earlier, 3 key cabinet members, including Greece's agriculture minister Kostas Siaras, resigned to facilitate the investigation. EU prosecutors have asked the parliament to lift the immunity of at least 11 MPs who are under investigation. Reeling from the political fallout of this crisis, Greece's Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis demanded a swift probe into the allegations.
I am asking the European Public Prosecutor's Office, once the immunity of our MPs has been lifted, to immediately take all investigative measures to determine whether, how many, and which individuals it intends to prosecute. And when I say swiftly, I mean it. Because we are talking about our members of parliament who have already suffered a personal and political blow.
However, the opposition in Greece is now up in arms over the alleged farm fraud scandal. It is calling for early elections, even as the elections are scheduled only in 2027.
Instead of taking Greece forwards, you are taking it backwards, back into decline, back into depreciation. And that is why we need elections. Elections so we can be done with it, so that a wind of change and opportunity can blow.
India has achieved a historic milestone in its civil nuclear program with the prototype fast breeder reactor, or the PFBR, at Tamil Nadu's Kalapakkam reaching criticality stage. Now, this means the reactor has successfully initiated a sustained nuclear fission chain reaction, bringing it one step closer to full commercial operation. This is the defining moment in India's nuclear journey, as it becomes only the second country after Russia to operate a commercial-scale fast breeder reactor. The PFBR is India's most advanced atomic reactor and represents the second stage of the country's 3-stage nuclear program. Unlike conventional nuclear reactors, which use water to cool the core and slow neutrons, this reactor uses liquid sodium to transfer heat and maintain high-energy fast neutrons. The unique design enables it to generate more fissible fuel than it consumes, converting fertile uranium-238 into plutonium-239, which can be reused as fuel. Looking ahead, the PFBR paves the way for India's 3rd-stage nuclear program, which will leverage the country's vast thorium reserves. India, remember, holds about 25% of the world's known thorium, while uranium is scarce and must be largely imported. Thorium-232 isotope is fertile but not fissile, which means that it cannot directly produce electricity. It must first be converted into uranium-233, which is a fissile fuel that can undergo nuclear fission in advanced reactors. This offers India the potential to generate up to 500 gigawatts of electricity for the next 400 years using domestic resources, making it a critical element for long-term energy security. When we compare conventional reactors and fast breeder reactors, the differences are striking. Conventional light water reactors consume more fuel. They use slow thermal neutrons and they produce large amounts of nuclear waste. It utilizes only about 1% of the energy in uranium. The PFBR, on the other hand, produces more fuel than it uses, runs on fast high-energy neutrons, uses liquid metal coolants like sodium, and can utilize up to 80 to 100% of uranium's energy, drastically reducing waste. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauded this achievement, praising the scientists and engineers behind the project. He called it a defining step in India's nuclear journey. PM Modi also emphasized that the milestone paves the way to harnessing India's extensive thorium reserves, which are central to the country's long-term energy independence. India's milestone also aligns with the country's broader climate and energy goals. As per reports, the government has outlined an ambitious plan to ramp up nuclear power capacity to 100 gigawatts by 2047 as part of its push towards low carbon and clean energy sources. Fast breeder reactors like the PFBR are seen as potential game changers, enabling long-term energy security while drastically reducing carbon emissions. Alexander Leonov, widely regarded as the brain behind the BrahMos missile, has passed away at the age of 74. His death marks the end of an era in modern missile engineering. Russian missile scientist Leonov served as the CEO and the chief designer of the Mashinostroyenia, a leading Russian defense firm. For nearly 5 decades, Leonov played a pivotal role in shaping cutting-edge missile technologies. For India, his contributions hold special significance. Leonov was closely associated with the development of the BrahMos missile, one of the fastest and most precise supersonic cruise missiles in the world. In fact, the BrahMos project stands as a shining example of the India-Russia defense cooperation as well, and it remains a cornerstone of India's strategic arsenal. It was one of the critical weapons used by India in Operation Sindoor to decimate terror hubs in Pakistan. Leonov is also credited as the key force behind Russia's hypersonic Zircon missile, which is capable of traveling at speeds up to Mach 9, essentially extremely difficult to intercept. While the cause of his death has not been officially disclosed yet, tributes have been pouring in, with many recognizing him as a visionary engineer whose work reshaped modern warfare capabilities. All right, let's get you the breaking news that is coming in at the moment. America has ruled out nuclear strikes on Iran. Of course, that is something that, we have told you about. But White House is now saying that only the president knows the next move. Meanwhile, there is a report coming in from the United Nations Security Council as well. Remember, there was a vote. Amid all of that, the White House has now stated that only President Donald Trump knows his next move. This is coming right ahead of the deadline, the 8 p.m. ET deadline, about to end in a few hours from now. And as far as the UNSC is concerned, there is a resolution to protect the Strait of Hormuz. That, of course, was voted upon, China and Russia vetoing it. Expectedly so, considering that they have been supporting Iran from the back end. But this is the big clarification that is coming in, the big statement coming in from United States of America, where the White House is saying only the president knows his next move. Let me quickly go across to Susan Teherani. She's joining us from New York at the moment. Susan, clearly the White House or the Trump cabinet not really giving out any clear answer before the deadline expires for Iran. What are you hearing from there? What can we expect in the next few hours?
Right. So the White House is signaling a deliberate ambiguity approach right now, as it has. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, she told reporters, as you mentioned, that only the president knows what he may or may not do when it comes to Iran. And the message, of course, appears to be strategic, keeping Tehran guessing about whether the U.S. will escalate militarily, push for more negotiations, give it more time, or all of the above. And for now, the administration says that diplomacy is still the first option, but it's also making clear that military force remains on the table if Iran doesn't change course. But it's also important to note that those military actions haven't halted until that deadline. As we're speaking right now, Iran continues to be attacked by Israel and U.S. forces. So the situation on the ground hasn't changed so much. It's the words that are going around in Washington and possibly other capitals that changes by the minute. The reality on the ground is that this war is still going on very strongly.
All right, Susan, thanks very much for joining us with those details. Of course, as we told you, at the UNSC, Bahrain had proposed the safe passage of the ships from the Strait of Hormuz, which remains closed at the moment. That has been vetoed by China and Russia, two of Iranian allies who have now stopped that resolutions from getting passed at the UNSC. All right, moving on. The 4 astronauts on NASA's Artemis II mission circled the moon. They went farther than any human in decades, past the moon into history. Our next story brings you the latest from this epic journey.
Inside the capsule, emotions surged. Years of planning, months of training, decades of ambition, all culminating in a single, breathtaking passage through space. Outside the window, the moon slipped by, grey, silent, unforgiving. Then the Earth appeared, a small blue glow in the distance.
We saw Earth disappear. Earth set, but we were so busy with the science, and we have such faith in our vehicle integrity, such faith in mission control, that we were just at complete peace and just doing our job, and just trying to do a good job to collect as much science data as we could while we were on the far side of the moon.
He's being a bit humble, but as soon as we went out of comm with Planet Earth, we did have maple cookies, as we just gathered together for about 30 seconds. Each one of us had a maple cream cookie and then right back into the science. But we had to take a moment to honor that time going behind Earth.
After traveling deeper into space than any other humans, the Artemis II astronauts pointed their spaceship towards home, wrapping up a lunar cruise that revealed views of the far side of the moon never beheld by eyes until now. The crew of the Artemis II have broken a record held since Apollo 13, the farthest distance from Earth ever reached by a human crew. A significant step towards landing boot prints near the moon's south pole in less than 3 years. The mission carried historic firsts as well. Glover became the first person of color to fly around the moon. Koch became the first woman. Hansen became the first non-American. They are no longer just astronauts. They are the bridge between the Apollo era and a future where the moon is not a destination, but a home base. US President Donald Trump has urged NASA to get boots on the lunar surface before his second term ends in January 2029. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
On this day, the 7th of April, 1980, 46 years ago, US President Jimmy Carter had cut diplomatic ties with Iran and ordered Iranian diplomats to leave the United States. The decision came amid the escalating hostage crisis after Tehran refused to free 52 Americans held at the US Embassy since November 1979. In March of 1980, Jimmy Carter had urged that the captives be handed over to Iranian authorities, but hopes of a breakthrough had collapsed when Ruhollah Khomeini said that the hostages would remain in captivity. The standoff ended only after 444 days when the hostages were released on the 20th of January in 1981. Following the incident 5 decades ago, Washington and Tehran remain without formal diplomatic relations till today. And on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas, but we will keep getting you news and updates from across the world. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye. Good night.
Five states, one powerful voice. From Tamil Nadu to West Bengal. Kerala to Assam. Every vote shapes the future. Get the election pulse only on WION.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening as we reveal the key